Record. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Love Rising podcast. We are here with Miana Melendez. I probably should have asked you if that's how you say your name. Is that right?
You got it right.
Okay, great. Miana Melendez. And I will read her bio right here and we'll get started. So, as a life coach and wellness writer, Miana Melendez blends spirituality and holistic living to guide women in taking aligned action on their dreams. With over 10 years of spirituality and astrology experience, Miana also uses crystals, the chakras, and holistic living to transmit her healing through your body, mind, and soul. Through personal growth and transformation, Miana will guide you to live your best spiritual life. She says, "We have a divine purpose, and it's my gift to support you in shining yours." Beautiful. So we are exploring mindfulness, and we're going to kind of talk about making every day a soulful experience, which I think is key to mindfulness. I mean, I think that's part of why mindfulness is so helpful, is to kind of find the specialness of every day, of every moment. So welcome, Miana. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we always like to start out with just hearing your story. Like, how did you get to where you are and why do you do what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to share. So I've grown up in a spiritual place. I started going to the Center for Spiritual Living at a really young age. It was a very small, it was just me and my mom. We had a black cat named Toby. And so we were always really close. And she was a librarian while I was growing up. And so we had this collection of books. And so, and me being an only child, I had, the pick of the litter here. And so anything from, the encyclopedia and Webster Dictionary to crystals and learning more about astrology, my mom just had it all right there at my fingertips. And so sometimes I'd be having to look things up and she'd be like, "Oh, look in the atlas, like look in the thesaurus, like I'm not your answer for everything." And so of course that taught me resourcefulness when I was trying to learn something. And I was like, "Oh, let me go get up from the kitchen and like look in the library of what we need." But also when I was in my downtime wanting to, explore something new, I'd be like, "Oh, let me pick up this book about the zodiac signs or about the chakras or about crystals." And so I had, an open mind at such a young age. And from middle school, we started going to the Center for Spiritual Living in Chicago, which is now called Bodhi. And so from there, I didn't realize it at the time, but I really was getting this foundational lifestyle and spirituality. And this was over, 10, 15 years ago when it was still very small and nobody was, everybody was talking about new age and yoga was just, kind of becoming a thing. And so from there, I was learning some signs of mind. I was learning, how to use our subconscious mind and all of these things at a young time. And I didn't realize it until I started going to school and I went to a private high school. And so from there, it was like at home and in school, I was able to ask all of those questions that were religion, that were science, theology. And so I had this beautiful mixture of both of these two different worlds of traditional and then the ancient modern wisdom as well. And it was, once I started getting to college, I was like, "Oh, I had my crystals and I had my yoga mat and, we're in such a small living room place for two women. And they're like, "Who's this girl with the spiritual stuff?" And so it was like at a young age, I was like, "Oh, like I didn't realize really that I was living a spiritual lifestyle," until I started interacting with more of my friends. And they were like, "Oh my gosh, tell me about the zodiac sign," or "What does this mean for me?" And so when I was being the go-to person for so many of my friends, I was like, I think that I'm onto something here. But I also loved doing what I was doing. And so from communication, when I went to college, I would learn more about communication and media, branding. And so it really just became a lifestyle and a hobby for me. Because what my true dream was at the time was to work for a nationally syndicated talk show. And I was able to do that. I worked for the Steve Harvey Show. And so at that time, I was like, okay, spirituality is what I do to, live this balanced lifestyle. But really what I want to do is television production. So I got my foot in the door. I love that job. And then I kind of hit a wall. It was like, it was something that I wanted to do for so long. And then I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, why am I mentally and physically exhausted? Why do I feel like this job is like soul crushing? And so it was like, I had this quarter life crisis at 25 where I was like, so I'm doing all of these things at home to, replenish me and get me ready for this next whirlwind day, working in TV. And so from there, I was like, you know what? I thought this is what I wanted for so long, and it wasn't. It was really depleting me in all of these different ways. And so from there, I went the safe route. I worked in human resources for 2.5 years at a great place with beautiful benefits, all of these checks marks, on the box. And I was like, this is the exact opposite of what I was dealing with working in television production, but it still wasn't feeding my soul in that creative place. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do? It's like I went for my dream and something changed. Then I went for the safe route and that wasn't fulfilling either. And so I finally was like, you know what? I want to bring spirituality into more of my life. This is really more than just a lifestyle. I want it to be a business. I want to support more women in learning about their spirituality, about mindfulness, about yoga and astrology. And so it was from there that I decided to move here to Mexico. And it was really just the idea of what do I want to do? And I knew I've always wanted to live abroad. I wanted to continue and learning and practicing my Spanish and being more bilingual. And so I was like, this place hits all of those different things. And I had come to visit my mom several times. She was living here at the time. And so it was like for over 2 years, I visited Mexico about 4 or 5 times. And I previously had been here on my own during like a college study abroad. And so I was like, you know what? This is a beautiful place. It's not too far, but it's not too close. It's always warm here and I get to learn more Spanish. And so I was like, you know what if I did move down to Mexico and start my own business? And it was an idea that I allowed myself to like fester and manifest. And it took me a year to really do the soul work and, financially, emotionally prep for that experience. But I've been here now since August of 2017, and I'm so happy to be here. And so, c'est la vie, that's my story. Now I have this beautiful coaching business online in Mexico.
Yeah, it sounds great. And I was thinking about how I feel like there a lot of my friends and a lot of colleagues, I guess you could say, people kind of doing the same things, have like this almost 25, it's like around the age of 25
Yeah.
where people are like, wait, I'm questioning like what the track my life has been on,
Yes.
And so maybe it used to be a midlife crisis and now we're just having quarter life crises or something. But
And I
yeah.
totally agree with that. And I wrote one of my first articles that I wrote for Bold magazine was having a quarter life crisis, because I think as each generation evolves, we get smarter, we get more wise. It's like all of those souls build onto us. And so in the past, maybe 25 plus years from being baby boomers to us being millennials, I think, our evolution has expanded and we've really, come back to the truth of it all. Back in the day, it was women who were, in the Celtics, in the Roman, the Romance period, the Egyptian, it was all based on women and that more Mother Nature based living and living off the land. And so it's now millennials and the generation that's coming up as well that are saying like, yeah, I do want more of that. I do want to live holistically. I want urban farms. I want to use my intuition and all of these different relics and things. And we're realizing that the temple is within us. Like we don't have to go necessarily outside to an institution or a building to say that I can live soulfully or that I could be one with the universe, because you already are just by being here.
Yeah. There, not to get too much off on a tangent, but this is about turning every day into a soulful experience, aka a lot of spirituality here that we'll talk about, I'm sure. So Kylee recommended a book.
Yes, I love books.
And it's just funny because we've been talking about it, but it's kind of saying, one of the things it's saying is that time is compressing, like
Mm-hmm.
things happen faster than they
Mm-hmm.
ever have before. And I think
Yes.
we can all experience that, right? If we're not into all the, maybe this high level, like almost scientific fact that time is compressing, we experience time more quickly, right? We're busy, our lives are
Yes.
more full, we have more experiences, I think, like, than our parents. Our parents are like,
Mm-hmm.
we're experiencing things at 13 that I didn't experience until I was in my 20s. And so
Mm-hmm.
that is a factor. And yeah, I think it's part of evolution for sure. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so what is like kind of your experience with mindfulness? It sounds like you've had I would say, alternative and unique experience with mindfulness. Like most people
Mm-hmm.
didn't grow up having it be part of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So what's kind of your experience with that, and what would you say to people who maybe haven't had that lifelong mindfulness experience, as far as like what mindfulness is and
Mm-hmm.
why we need it?
Yeah. Well, for sure, why we need it is because our attention span is shortening. And it's so funny how we can go to work the following day and someone asks us, how was your night? And you can't even recall what you did. And so for me, we've gotten so great at multitasking that we forget what we're doing actually, because we're doing so many things. And so even with technology, it's like, we're talking, you're recording, you're screen sharing. There's so much going on at one time. And that's why, the time is speeding up, because we could do so much in 1 minute. And so for me, mindfulness is kind of going away from that place of let me do two things at once, instead, and being more refreshed and saying, let me do one thing at a time. Let me really be engaged and present in what I'm doing. Because really, when we're multitasking, it means that we're not present in anything that we're doing, because we're switching in between so much that how can you be present doing two things at once? It's an anomaly. And so when we can be mindful through, turning away our distractions. So if we're going to read, or if we're going to watch TV, really being present and enjoying it, and putting your devices or any distraction to the side, or allowing ourselves to have that quiet time throughout the day. For me, I remember being on the train and in the morning daily commute, and everybody is doing something. So people are on their phones, they're reading, some people are sitting there probably sleeping, or maybe they're praying or putting on makeup. And so sometimes I would just sit there and collect my thoughts, like think of, what am I bringing into the day, or like what am I thinking about, and thinking of it from not this place of judging of, oh, today's Tuesday, I know I have to do all of these things, because that just puts out that kind of energy. And so it's coming at it from this positive place of, I can manifest or think of whatever it is in which I want to think of. Because no matter what thought we put out, whether it's positive or negative, our subconscious mind sees it and takes it. And so when we think of negative things, our subconscious mind is like, okay, great. Thanks for thinking that thought. I'm going to go out and manifest it for you. But you don't know that that thought was really actually negative, and vice versa. You could say, I'm bringing in positivity and abundance. And then you realize like, oh my gosh, I got a refund check, or, oh my gosh, my grandma gave me an extra $20. And we don't necessarily put those two things together, but they are connected. And so it's really thinking of it from this place of, we are the own, I don't want to say captains of the ship, but like our own orchestrators. It's like we are our own like Pinocchio kind of idea. It's like we can manifest and create the life that we want. It all starts within the mind and our thoughts that we put out there.
Yeah, I love that. So Annie Lamott talks about 3 prayers that we should say every day. And one is thank you, and one is wow. And I can't remember the third one, but I just loved the wow. Like that for me was one that really stood out, because it was so about like being present in the moment enough to go, wow, like the snow is so beautiful outside. There's snow where I am. So the snow is
Yeah.
really beautiful. Or, Or like, you know, if your alarm goes off and immediately you're like, okay, your mind just goes a million miles a minute, right? Like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed. Oh, I have all these things to do. Oh, my alarm stats, you know, kind of startled me. And she says like, I just wake up and I say thank you, and then my dog jumps on my bed and he begins his healing journey or his healing mission, and I just go, wow. And like, I love that because it really pulls you into the moment. And so just as a practical tool, I guess you can start. For me, I've been working on this, and you know, I would like to invite our listeners to do the same, is to start seeing how you can say, wow, you know, like, and how that pulls you in. And it also will allow you to create that moment of, you know, create each moment as just this beautiful blessing, I think. So I really loved that.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, you know, gratitude is what we anchor in when we have, you know, you're talking about like a negative thought, right? And I don't, you know, positive, negative, obviously we know it's all neutral. It's all part of the same. We need both. We need the positive and the negative. But when we get anchored in a story, Abraham Hicks and Ask and It's Given, they have the emotional spirals. So there's like the spiral downward. So I'm tired. You wake up and the alarm goes off and I'm tired. I'm not going to be able to work today. I'm overwhelmed. I have too many things to do. I'm not good at what I do. You know, like you like drop down when you anchor into that. And what mindfulness allows you to do, and this is some famous psychologist, but it's the space between the stimulus and the reaction is freedom. Right. And and mindfulness is what creates that space. And that space is, if you wake up, you think I'm tired, noticing I can choose to go into the story and go down the spiral, or the key to going up is gratitude, right? Like, wow, like Kylie saying, you know, it's like, that's gratitude. It's just like, wow, look at these clothes I have and the sky outside. And then you start to go up the spiral, right?
Yes, absolutely. I love that and that's so the truth, because, you know, and again, tied to, you know, where we are in the world and everything moving so fast and the fear of FOMO, you know, it almost takes a lot for us to say, wow, like we have to, it's like every wow has to get bigger and better than the next one. And so we almost can, like, what's the word I want to say? We desensitize ourselves to the wows of the world. You know, you can look out in nature and be like, oh, I've seen that yesterday. Like, oh, you know, the birds are chirping, whatever. But really, it's like every day that those are the small miracles. It's when we can wake up and say, wow, I am so happy to be here right now, because there's some people who aren't here with us anymore. There's some people who didn't wake up. And not only that, I'm just so grateful to continue my mission of whatever that is that I want to bring into the world, whether that's to make people smile or somebody laugh, or, you know, work on something that's really meaningful for us, or, you know, just like how you said, you have pets. I love the energy that they give us. And so, you know, nature is always abundant. And so when we can see that, then we can really start to say, wow, way more often than we normally do, as well as thank you, because all of those little things, you know, just looking outside your window and seeing the snow falling, or looking up in the sky and feeling the sun on you. I mean, it's amazing when you think that something's just holding everything up together, you know, gravity, and you get to feel that light on you, even though it's thousands of miles or, you know, light years away. I mean, it's astonishing. And so when you can think of those very common things as miracles, then you're like, oh my gosh, the world is amazing. This is wow. So I love that.
I would also, maybe while we're talking about, because I am super interested in crystals, it's kind of a new hobby that I'm slowly working into, and I've been dabbling throughout the years. But what is, maybe you could share with our audience some crystals that are really good for anchoring you and grounding you in each moment throughout the day, if there are such crystals?
Oh my gosh, yes. I would love to talk about crystals. And actually, I have to say, I have 2 crystals right here.
Yay!
So I actually have with me, this is moonstone, and I also have gold stone. So moonstone is a perfect crystal for women. It is all about really invoking your inner goddess, talking about your feminine energy and your intuition. So moonstone is great for any woman who is really wanting to use that intuition and spark their inner femininity. And then goldstone is also related to the sacral chakra. It's that orange color. And I know you can't see it on the screen, but it's super speckled with a lot of different golden light. If you saw it and you hit it in the sunlight, it would just be glimmering. And so this stone, as it's related to a sacral chakra, is all about manifestation. It's about really, what do you want to bring into the world? And it's a great stone to use for like moon rituals. If you want to, if you're creating a project or there's something that you're trying to launch per se. So like, from our creative place, that's where we birth things, that's where we manifest. And so if there's anything that you're looking to manifest or bring in, or especially when you're like setting forecasts for new times, it's a great stone for that. And then clear quartz is actually another great stone I'd recommend too. It's a daily cleanser as well as a daily protectant. And so, as we're women going out into the universe, we get sucked in and a part of so many other people's energy, our devices, depending on what we hear or see, sparks who we are. And so clear quartz is a great one to have, especially now that we're going into the holidays. It's high emotions for a lot of people. And so it's a great one to have in your pocket or your purse, even your jeans or your sweater or something, to remember that you could clear that energy. I like keeping my crystals on me or in my purse or something, because whenever I feel something that is steering me away, I just touch it. It's like, oh, it's in my purse. I just can bring it back in my hand and I'm like, okay, like I'm grounding, I'm anchoring myself back in this clear quartz energy. I'm, detoxing myself from whatever might be out there, and in my orb or in my space, I'm clear, I'm detoxed, I'm protected.
Okay. And then I know I'm like bringing us way off topic. We will get back to it. Stay tuned. But one last thing, I just, for me, for instance, we don't really have a good stone store here. And so when I go to see my sister, she's like 14 hours away though. Like I can go there and I can hold them and I can feel if I align with them. But if our listeners or myself, for example, want to order online, is there a way that you can kind of ground yourself to connect and see if that's the stone for you that you should be ordering?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say too, any stones, if you're looking for groundingness, I would say any stones that are red or black, clear stones, as well as earth, any green stones that, ground you into that, the earth space, or as well as brown stones. There's tiger's eye is another great one that grounds you into that place of, earth, the dirt. And so what I would recommend if you're just looking online is look and see. First, what I would do is maybe look at like a crystal encyclopedia or like a crystal A through Z, and kind of just scroll through there and see what kind of speaks to you. It's kind of as if like you walked into a store and you're just looking and seeing like, oh, what is speaking to me? And then from there, usually they have some type of bio or the properties, the meaning. And so it's like, oh, you're just scrolling. And then you're like, oh, this is really interesting. Like I just landed on green jade. And then you start reading about it and you're like, oh, it's tied to the heart chakra. I need some of that, And so it's kind of a way for you to almost like window shop online. So you could really intuitively sense what are you being drawn to. And then from there, you could go on Angel Muse or crystalvault.com and see about purchasing them. And I would say, just for sustainability, to try to support those actual crystal stores or bead stores, because I know we can get these things, and everything's becoming so mainstream that of course you could go into Home Goods or Target or Amazon and get them, but you don't always know where those are coming from. And so if you go to an energy based crystal.com place, then you have a more better feeling that this is what they do, this is their life's work, rather than maybe just finding it on Amazon, because you don't always know how they're getting their products. But I would say any crystal is a good crystal.
Perfect. Thank you. That is so helpful.
I like Etsy. I feel like Etsy
Yes.
has good vibes as far as like getting
Exactly.
stuff like jewelry or crystals themselves, or
I agree.
always send them with like, you know, the flowers and like a blessing, and you're like, ooh, this is good.
I love it because they give you that personal feeling, you know, like, you know, that someone has infused it with different energy. And so you get that full experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about, you know, what is a soulful experience? You know,
Yes.
we're turning every day into a soulful experience with all these different tools we've been talking about, and kind of this mindfulness. Like, what is that? What does that mean to you?
Yes. So for me, the soul is the center of who we are, you know. So for me, we are two halves of an equal whole. We have a split mind. We are both feminine and masculine. And we are taught at a young age first we're taught at a young age from the heart. You know, we have our imagination. We have, we're able to be out in nature as children, and we have that make believe. We see magic, we see miracles, and we're uncensored. And as we grow up, you know, then we start to, our parents, society, you know, we unlearn some of those things. Once we start learning that, Santa Claus or certain mystical creatures aren't real, you know, the fairy tale isn't real. And we start unlearning some of those foundations of what we did learn. You know, it's like, so then we become unbalanced. And it's really when we start to only think about things. So then we come from this mental place of we're thinking about things, we're over analyzing, and we completely, you know, almost disengage with our emotions. Like, we're not emotionally connected anymore because our mind has taken over, and it's so easy to think because we can think a mile a minute. And so for us to tune into the soul, it's for us to reconnect to our heart center. It's for us to reconnect to our emotions. And so how we do that is to recognize that I can ask myself a question in my mind, and I will get two responses. The first one I get is what my mind says, which is also can be our ego. Sometimes that's our intuition. It depends on how you're receiving it. Our ego is usually the loud voice that we hear first because it always wants to speak up. And sometimes our intuition is the softer voice. It's almost the one that you totally like almost want to toss out. You're like, what's that voice coming in saying turn left, or, you know, start doing something crazy. And so that's really the voice that we should be listening to, is our heart. But because we're so rational and logical, what our heart wants to do, it doesn't have any case in that. And so our heart is usually the one that says, oh, like, you should totally be more generous with your money, or, you know, you should totally, you know, buy that thing for yourself. And your rational, logical mind's like, no way, you need to save up, you need to stock up, that person doesn't deserve this, you know, you should be more judging. And so it's really this battle of the two. And so as we can become more soulful, it's by listening to that softer voice and by calling in our emotions and thinking about our bodies as not just this physical thing that gets us to do things from A to B, but really from this emotional place. You know, there's so many subtle cues that our body gives us on a daily basis that we sometimes completely negate or don't even feel it. I know for me, I used to be chronically running late. Time management was a thing for me. And so I would realize that I would feel anxious. I'd have this pit in my stomach, and I would just be like, oh, of course, like, I'm running late. This is how I'm supposed to feel. And it wasn't until I realized, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm actually giving myself a stomach ache. I had to recognize that I was putting my body through an emotional experience that my mind was saying, oh, it's okay. Like, you know, this is you always are 5 minutes late. This is just what you do. And people are going to have to wait for you. And when I realized, like, oh my gosh, I don't like this feeling anymore. And I had to ask myself, what were those emotions? You know, was it anxious? Was it anger? And once I got down to it, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not listening to myself. And when
Yeah. Oh, Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay. And when you can listen to yourself, that's when you can really start to feel connected to your mind, body, and soul, because we're hyper connected to our mind, and we're kind of connected to our body. We know our body is how we get to do things and walk in the world, but we're not really that connected to our emotions. And so when we start to feel more is when we can say, oh, I know I'm connected to my heart, because that's our center of emotion.
Yeah, I love this, because it was something I've been thinking about. Like, I kind of get into like metaphors and to explain these kind of mind bendy things. And one of the metaphors I've been exploring comes from that Mary Oliver poem. I think it's called Wild Geese. I just looked it up. It's like, you do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves.
Yes.
And that soft animal of your body, and then talking about pets. So the metaphor is, if my dog is, kind of running around my feet and I accidentally stepped on him and he yelped, I would immediately take my foot off and be like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. And so our bodies, like if we think of our bodies as like, we have a soul and we're here doing this mission, and then we have these soft bodies that are the animal, we're the animal on the earth, and they're yelling at us, they're yelping, right? We're stepping on their toes. We're like making ourselves work hard when we're tired. We're not feeding them good food. We're making them go to holiday parties that they don't want to go to, that my body is saying no, but we're going anyway because our minds are like so in control. Then it's like we're stepping on our sweet puppy's foot and just saying, and not getting off of it, So I think if we can kind of think of, our bodies as these soft animals, these like sweet things that need to be taken care of, that are talking to us constantly, that can be a good perspective shift, and also create a more loving communication, so that our bodies don't have to scream, right? Because eventually they'll scream. Eventually they'll just shut down, and then
that's when you get sick.
yeah. So they'll make us do what they want us to do eventually, and that's, I think, what people forget, is that, oh, I can make myself get up, go to bed at midnight, and get up at 5 every day for years, and not do anything because I'm mentally tough. I have willpower.
Right.
Like, well.
Yeah. And it's also coming and recognizing that there's feminine ways to do things, and then there's the masculine way to do things. And when we can balance both of those out, because we need both, we need both of those energies for us to push forward and to take action on what we want, but we can take action in the right way. We can flow through what we want to do, and we can work from a place of grace, and not from this place of have to get it done to have my to-do list, and I have to have this deadline. Oh, but I'm running late, so now I have to really rush through everything. It's saying like, you know what? I can actually create more time in my day if I were to wake up earlier or go to bed earlier, if I were to, have a few minutes in the morning to jot down what my thoughts or intentions were, if I were to really take a moment of silence or a moment of gratitude to listen to my body, just to hear what is coming up. For me, I'm all about morning routines and morning rituals. And so that's something for me that's so important, that is really all about tuning into yourself. That's the first thing that we should do in the morning. And I used to be notorious, and I still do have my phone now at the foot of my bed. I used to sleep with my phone next to my bed, or next to my pillow. And I recognized that by doing that, as soon as I woke up, I would instantly be plugged in to the world. I would want to check my email in bed, check my Instagram, and of course my horoscopes. I have to check my horoscope. So that was kind of my go-to. I'm like, well, I'm being feminine. I'm checking my horoscopes in bed before I check my news. And then I had to realize, like, oh my gosh, like that's my horoscope is important to me, but what's more important is tuning into myself first. My horoscope is someone else's perception of what the day might bring for me. But what I know to be true is what I want to call in first. And so that was really a time for me to say, how can I, before I even put my feet on the ground, how can I be aware of who I am, what I want to bring into the world, and have that place of thank you and wow. For me, I think if anything, that third, what Kylee was saying was that third one is probably thank you, thank you, wow, and I love you, because we don't say I love you enough to ourselves, and especially to our bodies. I love myself, I love my body, I love the way I do certain things, and because we're very loyal people, millennials, we will give the shirts off our back, we love to support our friends, and we build people up. We're happy people most of the time, I think, naturally. And so we give so much to others that shows our love, but we forget that we have to show ourselves love foremost for us to give love to others. It's like filling up our cup. We have to fill up our own cup first in the morning for us to then go out and have that drive and energy to fill up other people's. And so that's another great way to recognize, how can I bring in more of my emotions or more of that subtle body, that feminine place? And that's all by saying all three of those things in the morning is thank you, I love you, and wow. I love that. I'm going to have to start incorporating that into my day as well, because it's so easy to do, but it's something that we forget very often.
So what if, let's take someone who is having like the shittiest day ever. Like it's, one thing after the other, getting triggered left and right. How would one go about making that day a soulful experience?
Yes. Well, I would only hope that they have some type of crystal or something with them, but if not, you can rest assured there's multiple ways to be tuned in. What I would do is I would find a quiet space. So if you're at work, go into a bathroom stall or find a quiet closet, step away from it, whatever it is. If you're at a holiday party, walk into the bathroom, or just remove yourself from a moment and close your eyes and take in a few deep, long breaths, because that is the number one way to be tuned back into your body. And that's the number one way to stop some of those thoughts, because we can remove ourselves physically from the situation, but we have to remove it from here too, because we could still think in our minds, oh man, this person's upsetting me, the situation has got me going. And so even though we're away from it, we're still dealing with it or internalizing it. And so in order for us to do that, we have to quiet our minds. We have to say, I can get through this. It's saying that I'm stronger than I think I am. It's saying that I'm not going to allow this energy to enter into my space. And so it's just having that, it's almost like that Harry Potter, the invisible cloak. It's like every time I walk outside, I have my Harry Potter invisible cloak on. It's like no matter what is around me in my force field, and I say especially the same thing with the news, because I love being an informed citizen, especially living outside of my home country, the United States, but I still want to be aware of what's going on. I still feel like that's important to me. And I have to keep my distance, like an arm's reach, and say, I can be aware of what's going on. I could be mindful and in tune, but I don't have to internalize those feelings. If someone's projecting something on you, you do not have to take that in. You can allow someone to feel that for themselves, but it's not something that you have to agree with, and so it's that same idea of when people are now going to get the flu shots, it's, is it mind or matter that someone gets sick right after? Is it thinking like, oh, I'm going to get the flu shot, so I'm invincible, and then you get the flu? Or is that the way that it's kind of prescribed? I don't know. But it's recognizing that we do usually have a wall open that allows all of these things to come into us, that if someone's thoughts or opinions about us, they come in. And for us to recognize that only we have the power to change our emotions, our thoughts, our moods, our habits. And so that's the first trick of the ego, really, is when we're in those difficult situations, think of it as a test. because that's what the universe is doing. The universe is saying, I'm going to have so-and-so or this situation press their buttons, and we're going to see how she reacts. And so from there, we can say, okay, this situation has got me a little frazzled, but you know what? I don't have to prescribe to that. I don't have to believe in that. I don't have to do really anything with that. If that's someone's experience of what I'm doing, I can say, excuse me, pardon myself. I apologize for this is how I made you feel. You can even say sorry, because forgiveness, of course, is always part of the answer too. But from there, you can say, you don't even have to say anything, just saying, I know the truth. I know that I'm a vessel of light. And so from there, you could really recognize that we don't have to go down that spiral with that other person, because that's what is trying to do. Misery loves company, right? And so two egos definitely want to bring themselves together and have a pity party. And it's harder, right, to be that person, to stand up and to raise and uplift yourself and to stay in that place when something is trying to shake you. But when you do stay in that place, that's when you know you are grounded in your soul, because nothing is able to break you.
That's so good. And I think that kind of tying some things together is when we set an intention for the day.
Yes.
And we revisit that intention and we say, is how I'm reacting aligning with the intention that I send? Or, and I think that's a really powerful way to pull you into making your day soulful. You show up and you decide how you're going to show up for the day. And then when you start to react, you touch your crystal and you go, does this align with my intention? And so it all kind of comes back together in that beautiful way.
I love that. And that's another great one too, for sure.
Yeah, I love that too. One thing that and this is, I think, applicable for like the holidays, and there's a lot of social stuff typically that happens on the holidays. And if you don't have social stuff going on, that's fine, and all listeners. But my holidays tend to be like, there's parties and there's seeing family and a lot of social stuff. And I used to get really overwhelmed by that. And one thing I've found that it will like make all the difference is exactly what you're saying. Like just going to the car, like if I'm at a party and I start to feel that like overload of, because I'm very intuitive. I think we all are like very intuitive, very empathetic. Like I take on, the emotion, and when it's an awkward, maybe like social situation, I like feel all that awkward kind of tense energy. And so if I feel that coming on, I'll go to the car, like literally leave the party, leave the energy, and just sit there and breathe a few moments. Like it doesn't have to be like an hour. It could be like 5 minutes even. And just taking a few breaths, centering myself, maybe coming back to my intention, and then going back in. And or like this summer I had a bunch of weddings and I would do that. Right. Start to get like wrapped in all the energy. And so, I think that's so great. Like when you start to be really wrapped up in, or even if it's work, you're like working and I got to get this done. And that tendency towards distraction happens, to go like take a nap for 5 minutes or just disengage and come back.
I completely agree. And the answer for all of this too, of course, is more love. And so whether something's coming to you and you could say, you know what this person really needs is more love. That's really the basis of it, is there needs to be more love out into the universe, and for us to transmit that to others. We all need that sense of I love what I'm doing, especially when it comes to work, because we can love what we do and then we get in the midst of a project, deadlines are coming up, new additions, you have to revise things. And then it comes from this place of, oh, I love doing what I was doing 2 weeks ago and now I'm dreading it. And so we have to like take that moment and that step back and ask ourselves, am I coming at this from a right place? Because if I'm if I'm doing something right now, it's the same thing with cooking. If I'm cooking something and I'm upset about it, or the same thing about doing the dishes or laundry, it's like, that's when you break a glass. That's when you cook something and you're like, did this not come out right? Maybe they should have had more spices. Or looking at it and being like, oh man, like that's when you make most mistakes, is when you're rushing, having that more masculine energy. And so that's another great way, is to recognize and be like, am I out of balance here? And usually when we are, is when we can flip that over and say, okay, I need to come back into love. I need to come back into this place of flowing. I need to go back to the points in which I loved this person or this event or this work, and so taking time to step away from it is usually the most helpful for us to find more clarity, as well as for us to have love at the top of our mind, that when we do walk into those social situations, or, having to deal with people, quote unquote, that we might have some energy around, that we know that we are giving them light and love, no matter what they are giving us. And so it's having that feeling of, I'm a light person, I'm a person of love, and so I'm going to attract that of which I give out. And so when you put out goodness, that's exactly what you receive. And then when things do come into your sphere that might not be on your same wavelength, you just extend them more love, because that's the biggest thing that we need more of. And when we extend it out, no matter what, and when we extend it out first. And so I would definitely recommend or encourage anybody who's walking into some of those situations, that to give everybody, or that particular person, send them love before you even get there. Send them, high vibes before you even get there, and do not pre-assume or prejudge or pre-futuristic anything, because that's how we get ourselves, what you think about, you bring about. And so, and both of those things kind of can negate each other. So you could say, oh, I'm sending grandma or auntie love. And then as soon as you walk in the door, you're like, oh, there she is. And so it totally, cancels each other out. And so instead, if you keep on that way, then you can almost see a change in people. It's like, we're not always aware of those little subtle nuances, but they are there. And so when we can always be in that place of love, then we will be surprised how often other people are too.
That's so true. So two things, like, quickly, just knowing, I know that, like, in the past, when I would hear, this kind of stuff, like, just stay positive, disengage, like that I would be like, that's naive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not real. And
Mm-hmm.
I think what's important to notice is that this is not, it's not ignoring things. It's actually empowered, right? It's claiming that we get to choose the meaning that we assign to different situations. So for those of you out there who might be like, yeah, this sounds like all this hippy dippy wooey, like, just stay positive stuff. It's like, it's actually a very empowered place to live your life from, to say, I'm in control of how I assign, or what meaning I assign to my different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, so it's not distracting yourself, because I think
Mm-hmm.
that can sometimes be where people take this. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I have bad feelings, I'll just ignore those and distract myself with positive feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just say, I'm good, I'm awesome. I'm like the kind of like affirmation thing, where it's like, we're not acknowledging, it's we're stating how we feel, and then we're
Mm-hmm.
assigning a different meaning to it. We're anchoring in the meaning that best serves us and everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I wanted to just say is that, yes, like, people do change. If you change how you interact with people, they will always delight you. They will just delight you. If you put that good energy out to your aunt who normally triggers you, and you kind of like put the intention out, and you really get in a good place with her, and you really try to have compassion for whatever, her issues are or what she's going through.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had that like backfire, or I've always been delightfully
Mm-hmm.
delighted with the results of that. Like just
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy. It's like people that you've
Yes.
labeled one way will be a
Mm-hmm.
completely different way, and you're like, oh, I guess I didn't. I guess that was me. You know?
Yes. And that's what it is. It's like it's that projection, so it's like if we have an image of what somebody is like in our mind, then that's what we see out in the material plane. That's what we see out in reality. But if we change that projection, then we can change what we see in reality. And I would also say too, mindfulness and having that soulful experience, because this is a huge piece too for people who might be like, oh, I don't believe in that, is asking ourselves, what are we the most loyal to? Because mindfulness is not instant gratification. It's a lifestyle, and it's also a practice that I know I continuously do multiple times a day. This is not something that I'm just like, oh, I'm mindful and then everything's easy peasy. No, I get distracted by my phone just like anybody else. I have deadlines too. I have things that trigger me. And so it's remembering that we have, just like as if we were going to a gym and we have to flexing our muscles, we have to flex our emotional muscles. We have to flex our intuitive muscles, and especially now with the holidays, I love the metaphor that the universe or God is not Jesus. It's like we cannot think that if I pray one time, that my miracles are going to come true, and so we have to remember that we are loyal to a lot of different things. I know I'm loyal to my phone. I'm loyal to different different apps or prescriptions of things. And so it's like when we're loyal to the wrong things, then we can't ever get loyal to the right things. And so we have to recognize that we sometimes have to unlearn to relearn something else. And so mindfulness is not an overnight pill, and so, but when we do bring it in over time, we will start to see that ripple effect of, oh, I could be mindful while I'm cooking, or I could be mindful on my commute to and from work. I could, there's so many moments in life where we could say, oh, I'm just going to sit here, even when we're, waiting for an appointment or a meeting. So many of us are just on our phones, distracting ourselves, like, oh, I need to fill my time. And so when we can fill our time with ourselves, then we could really start to realize it's not that my mind is racing when I'm trying to be quiet. It's actually because I'm never quiet, my mind is racing. And so I know for some people, especially I know for myself, it used to be really hard for me to get to sleep at night because my mind, that would be the one time that I'd finally allow myself to be quiet. And so of course my mind would be racing because it hasn't really allowed, I haven't allowed myself to process anything throughout the day because I've been distracted. And then finally, when I was in that quiet place, I couldn't get to sleep because my mind was constantly chattering. And so when we can have those little pockets of time, 2-3 minutes, 60 seconds, 10 minutes throughout the day, then when we do get home and we're ready to just let everything go, we can actually do that instead of continuously thinking about everything. But yeah, mindfulness is a practice that we do have to work up and work out. And so when we can see it from this place of, let me try something, it's kind of like that trial period, like, money back guarantee, like try it for 7 days, try it for 14 days and see what happens, because it really is going to allow you to not only remember what you've been doing, but for you to see it at a deeper place. It's like for us to be able to look outside and be like, oh my gosh, that beautiful bird just flew in front of me. Wow. And then for us to, make something delicious for our family or for ourselves and be like, oh my gosh, I just made something delicious instead of, quick, easy in the microwave, gotta go buy. So it's having those moments throughout the day that allows us to have that soulful experience throughout, and for us to keep coming back to those prayers or those intentions.
Yeah, beautiful. Like where I think that loyalty thing is like, where are we worshiping? Like, what altar am I worshiping? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it technology? Is it productivity? Is it Like, what's on my altar, right? And what do I want to be on my altar,
Mm-hmm.
right? So good.
Right.
Thank you so much. Please tell people how they can find you.
Yes, I am on YouTube as Miana Melendez, as well as Instagram and Facebook as Miana Melendez. And I'm just sending everyone so much love and light. I'm so happy to be here and speaking with both of you as well as your audience, and really sharing how you can create a soulful experience in every day. So thank you so much.
Yes, and we will link all those up in the show notes so people can find you easy. And yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This was great.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.